Brian Windhorst on ESPN said something about Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse. And here's what he said. Even Brian Windhorst, I was mildly surprised that Morey and Nurse are returning. Even Brian Windhorst thought they were going to clean house. But I found out that ownership was on board and agreed with and endorsed and signed off with the moves that they made last year. Of course they were. Ownership has to be on board and has to sign off with the moves that you make. You know what I mean? This is why when people were like, they need to fire Daryl Morey, they need to fire Nick Nurse, and I agree. But the people keep saying it, or people that were assuming it's going to happen, right? If this doesn't work, Morey needs to be fired, right? Or if they don't make the playoffs, Morey needs to be fired. The owners signed off on this stuff. It's not like he did all this stuff and the owners are like, oh my God, that's a terrible decision, you're fired. No, they were like, yeah, it's a good decision. I'll sign the dotted line there. Yeah, signing Joel Embiid knowing he was injured is a great decision. You know what? Just sign him until 2029. When he's hurt right now in 2024, sign him until 2029. Yeah, fantastic decision. Which is why Daryl Morey has not been fired, which is why Nick Nurse has not been fired. And it's just another blunder by the 76ers ownership group, who's been blundering blunders since the beginning of time. Since they bought this team in 2011, they have just been making wrong move after wrong move after wrong move after wrong move. And instead of selling the team when they should have sold it, when it was worth something a couple years ago, they continue to drive it downward. And the nail in the coffin is a 5-year death sentence of Joel Embiid and Paul George dead contracts. You are locked in to max money for a guy that can't get back on the floor and another guy who doesn't give a shit and would rather be a podcaster. You are locked into max money until 2029. You're in a worse situation than basically everybody not named the Phoenix Suns. And they can trade Kevin Durant and get some picks back. So maybe you are. But yeah, ownership signed off on it. Of course they didn't get fired. Windhorst says the two big ones are obviously signing Paul George and extending Joel Embiid. So I think the ownership are giving Daryl Morey the grace that this was a terrible year in terms of injury and misfortune. But what I would say to both Daryl and Nick is you have no margin for error now. You didn't have margin of error last season. Now you have no margin of error? Well, chalk it up. You know? Send it in. It's a wrap. You really think Daryl Morey, who couldn't build a winning roster here, couldn't build a winning roster in Houston, didn't know basically anything about the NBA besides let me go get everybody that played for the Rockets in 2015. I mean, the guy fucking re-signed Daniel House for crying out loud. You know, the guy went and signed Montrezl Harrell. The guy went like, come on, man, what are we talking about? The guy signed PJ Tucker after he was 1 foot in retirement. The guy keeps re-signing Kyle Lowry. This guy does not know how to build a basketball team, man. How do you go into 2025 and look at all the other basketball teams? Well, he doesn't look at all the other basketball teams. That's how. How do you see the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks and everybody else and how deep and physical they all are? How do you see all of those teams and say, give me Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, and Andre Drummond as a supporting cast, and we're going to go get it done, and you get absolutely smoked by everybody and start the season 3-15. Terrible roster construction. Terrible. So how's Daryl Morey going to go into this offseason and fix this whole thing to the point where they have to have an excellent year? You have no margin for error. If next year isn't an excellent year, I would say that they're the hottest seats in the NBA. How's next year going to be an excellent year? How, dude? This is like every New Year's Eve, the same person who keeps falling on their face saying, this year is my year. This year is my year. Except they're not going to change anything about their lifestyle, right? This person keeps getting in trouble, keeps going to jail, keeps getting whatever. This year is my year. Are you going to change something about your lifestyle? And they don't, because they're not going to, because they haven't for 20 years. That's what Daryl Morey is doing. He's not going to change. How's he going to? The Sixers are this way because this guy has been running teams like this since he was in Houston. So instead of firing the GM and bringing in somebody who thinks about the game and roster construction totally differently, you're going to expect the same fucking guy to do it differently? Shout out to Harris Moore that said, kind of hard being excited for next season. Exactly. This ownership group does everything 2 years too late. They're actually going to go into next season with Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse and expect the fan base to come back to the arena. And then when nobody shows up day one, they're going to say, all right, you guys are fired. It's just crazy. The whole thing is insane. And it's so hard to talk about the 76ers right now, which is why I've gravitated towards talking about the rest of the NBA, because I just don't care, dude. People send me stuff all the time. Did you see what so-and-so said? Did you see what the Sixers are having practice or preseason in Abu Dhabi? Pfft, fuck off, man. Stop talking to me about that. I don't care. Sixers have a preseason in Abu Dhabi. What? I'd rather watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians at this point than to talk about the 76ers, man. They suck. They're signed in bad contracts until 2029. They have one of the most fraudulent basketball players I've ever seen on the roster. Can't get rid of him. They have a dumbass coach. They have a dumbass GM. They have dumbass owners. What's there to talk about? What's there to look forward to? This is hereby a mainstream NBA news channel until the 76ers owners sell the team. I got to go to the gym. Thank you guys for tuning in. You are the best.